I'm Dr. Sundari Johansson Harwit. I'm a scholar of South Asian philosophy and religion. And in this video, we're going to talk about yantras and the body. So I'm going to be speaking pretty broadly and generally in this video, and there's a lot of this is applicable to a wide variety of tantric traditions. As always, I feel that I need to make a disclaimer that this is not going to be true for every tradition. There are going to be differences. Some people are going to have different ideas, and some texts will say different things. This is just a sort of general overview. That being said, let's dive in. The nature of the body in tantric traditions is really quite different from, say, Advaita Vedanta or other more orthodox schools. The orientation of Tantrism to material reality is really fundamentally different, and this affects the view of the body. Whereas in Vedanta, the body in the material world is seen as illusory and something to be transcended, in Tantra, particularly in the Shakta traditions of the Kaulas from the 11th to 12th century onward, broadly speaking, the material world is seen as real. It's a manifestation of Shakti. Now, while many of the Kaula schools have subscribed to a more Shaiva cosmogonical orientation, which goes back to the idea of Shiva as the force of will and Shakti as the force of creative action that emerges from him and activates that will, there is a significant portion of the Kaula schools that believe that the goddess is the ultimate reality and that she's generating both Shiva and Shakti from herself to create the world. And generally you're going to find this in the Kalikula schools, after the 15th, 16th century, when they start to really bubble up in Bengal and Assam. As we talked about earlier, this vibration of creation and divine power is really reflected in yantras. They're the visual representation of the unfolding and emerging and interactions of vibrations and stillness that is the true form of the deity. In tantric ritual, the body is not just existing in ritual space and engaging in ritual. The body is the primary site of the ritual. So, for example, in the traditional worship, food and drink is offered to the deity in Orthodox worship, right? You offer food to the deity like they're a guest. In tantric ritual, food and drink is consumed by the practitioner. So this offering and consumption of food is an affirmation of that non-separation from infinite being, or Brahman, which is in many Shakta traditions is closely identified with the goddess, and in Shaiva traditions with Shiva. The body as the site of worship and the site of divinity also implies that the body not only participates in the creation of yantra, but that it is actually the ultimate, most central yantra of ritual worship. So the body is the yantra. The body both is the yantra and creates and interacts with the yantras. If we think about the body as a yantra, the yantra is really internalized in the body through ritual praxis and externalized through ritual praxis. Now, various forms of nyasa, which is the placement of syllables on the body. There's like karanga nyasa, which is a placement of syllables in the hands and fingers. There's matrika nyasa, which is placement of all the syllables of the alphabet throughout the body. There's lots and lots of different forms of nyasa. It's necessary for, establishing the body in ritual space. These processes really serve to construct the body as a yantra, sort of the place where deity resides during the ritual. And the body is really the engine of tantric ritual. So if we think of yantra as an engine, like literally the word yantra meaning engine, or motor or contraption. The body is the engine of the ritual.
कनकऋषिः गायत्री छन्दः श्रीमहागणपतिर्देवता ग्लां बीजं क्लीं शक्तिः ग्लूं कीलकं गां अङ्गुष्ठाभ्यां नमः ह्रीं तर्जनीभ्यां नमः भूमध्यमाभ्यां नमः गैं अनामिकाभ्यां नमः गौं कर्षिकाभ्यां नमः गः करतलकर्मष्ठाभ्यां नमः गां हृदयाय नमः गीं सरसे स्वाहा गूं शिखायै वषट् गैं कौचाय हुं गौं नेत्रत्रयाय वौषट् गः अस्त्राय फट् भूर्भुवस्सुवरोमिति दिग्बन्धः ॐ आं ह्रीं क्रों यं रं लं वं शं शं सं हं लं शं हंस सोऽहं सोऽहं हंसः श्रीमहागणपतेः प्राणयः प्राणः जीवयः स्थितः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि वाङ्मनस्त्वक्चक्षुश्रोतजिह्वाग्रहणप्राणापानव्यानोदानसमानाः इहैवागच्छ सुखं चरन् तिष्ठन्तु स्वाहा सान्निध्यं कुर्वन्तु स्वाहा ॐ.
During ritual, the yantra is internalized. The deity is invoked via mantra and visualization. This brings together sort of the gross, the subtle, the causal forms, all within the body of the practitioner. Now, the externalization of the yantra takes place in different forms, and the body is engaged in the creation of those in different ways. So in routine practice, yantras are used to establish a foundation for ritual items and ritual practice. These processes are called Tapana, which is establishment, and Shuddhi, or purification. The hands are used to complete these, and typically the mantras are silent and internalized, though they can be spoken aloud. These processes, over time, with lots of practice, become almost automatic. So Tapana is an extremely important component of tantric ritual. Tantric sampradayas are linked through specific lineage mantras and ritual forms, but these mantras and rituals are considered spiritually dead, empty, or even dangerous without being properly established and empowered. So Tapana is the process of establishing and empowering the ritual space and ritual objects. Everything requires a process of Tapana for the empowerment and protection of the practitioner as well. Shuddhi and Tapana go together, though they're not the same thing. They're sort of cooperative processes. The practitioner establishes a ritual object with Tapana, and then immediately engages that object in a process of purification. You can't have one without the other. You can't purify without establishment. And once you establish it in ritual space, it has to be purified. Using a series of mudras and mantras, for each ritual item, the practitioner will draw an invisible yantra with their finger under the item for it to rest on. And usually they'll use either alcohol or water, some kind of liquid, to create that yantra. And then to perform the shuddhi, then they will put a flower or a piece of food, if they're using food in the ritual, on that yantra to purify, to create a purified space. And then sometimes with some items, not every item, but with some items, once the item is placed onto that invisible yantra, some items also require another invisible yantra to be drawn on top of that, sort of create this comprehensive, purified, established object. Now, yantra is also part of the homa or the yajna. In the homa, which is the fire ceremony, a yantra is, in the tradition that I studied at Kamakhya during my fieldwork, the way that they construct a homa is they draw a yantra with sindoor in the bottom of the pit where they are going to build the fire, and then they stack wood on top of it. They put a piece of wood in the center as a kind of bindu, then they light the fire. There is a whole process of Tapana and shuddhi that happens using the mantras and using the yantras. It's a very elaborate process. As we've discussed already, yantras are also used to establish practices and mantras in the body. And this is primarily done through the process of nyasa, which is very well known. There are also processes of affirmation or acceptance, the svikara, that use yantras to appropriate divine power and invoke various forms of deity in different parts of the body, such as the palm of the hand or in the mouth or just different places, used for particular ritual acts. And this process affirms the sort of alchemical transformation of the body, so that and of the illicit substances that are put into it, like alcohol, like meat, like fish, that kind of thing. Now, yantras can also be drawn on the body as part of the initiation process, for purification or shuddhi and other purposes. So another way that the body is engaged with yantras in ritual is through worship of the yantra. Not every tradition worships yantras, but some traditions do. And Sri Vidya is a very good example of that, because the Sri Chakra is often the center of worship. So when the yantra is worshipped itself, the deities are visualized as emerging from it or in the yantra, and in this case the body is engaged in worship by offering flowers, liquids, foods, and other items to the yantra, and the practitioner may also consume some of these foods. So that's about it for this part. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but we only have so much time. So this is the part of the video where we think about what we've learned, where we consider questions that have come up, and think about how our assumptions have changed or been affirmed. And so I'd like you to take a couple minutes just to kind of like write down some of your thoughts and go back to what you wrote for the other videos and see what's changed, see what's the same, see if anything surprised you. Have you been surprised? Was none of this surprising at all? Am I just telling you things you already know? Who knows? But I want you to write those things down in your reflections, and just to kind of give you more juice to work with. So while you do that, I'm going to say bye for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next and last video. Bye!